I'm thinking about users. If I've talked to users and 10 users tell me they're all looking for the same thing, but they don't look for it because it doesn't exist, then you create it. And guess what? Those end up being zero search volume keywords. But instead of thinking about a single keyword, which again is the wrong frame of mind I think you should be in, a zero search volume keyword, I think you think about it at scale. Wow, there are 10 users that think like this. Are they representative of thousands of other users that I also want to create for and create great products for and scale that up?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SaaS SEO. So today's guest was the first SEO hire at SurveyMonkey and built SEO and organic search as one of the major and main drivers of growth for the company. And we all know how that went. SurveyMonkey is a public company nowadays. He's done consulting with companies such as WordPress, Shutterstock, Quora, Zendesk, G2, Mixpanel, and the list goes on. And he's one of the most frequent speakers when it comes to conferences around SEO and growth. And he has published most recently the book on product-led SEO. He's no other than Eli Schwartz. And Eli, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. So before we have many interesting things that I'd like to discuss with you today, but before we jump into the questions, could you share, please, a couple of things about yourself? How did you end up doing what you do today?
It's a good question. I was working in an internet company that was designed to help bring people that were looking to find a service with those that were looking to purchase the people looking for that service. So lead generation company. And this was many years ago. I was an affiliate manager working with these websites that are able to generate leads. And I really liked what my affiliates were doing. So they were using SEO, they were using PPC, social didn't exist, but they were driving traffic towards our websites. So I would hit all my sales goals, and then I'd do my best to start reverse engineering their processes. And I became very interested in that. And I tried to get a job in SEO, but I couldn't get one because I didn't have an SEO experience. So then I put down on my resume that I was doing SEO because I was doing keyword research for my affiliates. And suddenly I had SEO experience. And the rest was off to the races from there. So building on experiences for anybody listening that's looking for a job in SEO, your first job in SEO may not be handed to you. You may have to take it. So start doing SEO for yourself. That's what I started doing. And I felt I knew enough about SEO to pretend I knew enough about SEO, and I built my career from there.
Okay, that's great. Good to know. I didn't know that you had an affiliate background, by the way, but it's really interesting. Now, in April of this year, you published, I think it was in April, that you published the book on product-led SEO. I have read the book and I highly recommend it to anyone who is listening to this podcast, regardless of their level, of expertise. But could you please share with us what's the basic idea behind product-led SEO, what product-led SEO is all about, and what the book as an extension is all about?
So what it comes down to is really understanding the way most people do SEO today. So most people do SEO by doing keyword research and identifying the keyword that's going to do well on Google and building their SEO efforts around that single word. Product-led SEO is really that your SEO comes into a product, an artifact for a user that is going to benefit a user, and not just because of the keyword. And obviously this is future-proofing your SEO efforts because it's not dependent on algorithm changes. If you're building for a user, then Google's always going to be where the users are. So product-led SEO is really about building a great product for your search users, and SEO is driven from that. Not at all related to product-led growth, where you put a good product out there and then people share about it. This is about you focus on the product first, and then your SEO comes as a part of the fact that there are people searching for that product, rather than the way most people are doing SEO today, which is content-led SEO, which is they're doing some keyword research and slapping up content just because the keyword exists and then hoping they do well in search engines without really thinking about the user experience and the user benefit down the line. And when you do product-led SEO, the obvious KPI that you want to measure is revenue or downloads or whatever the business does. When you're doing content-led SEO, you become very focused on rankings and how well you do on a search engine, and you leave yourself somewhat naked to an algo update because you built all your strategies around the algorithm. Again, if you're doing product-led SEO, you're building strategies around the user. So even if Google would cease to exist, then you still have a great product that users want to use. You still have a great product that should do well on social, a great product that should do well on email and all other channels. And then another search engine obviously will come and fill in that blank in their own way. With, again, content-led SEO, if again, you build all your strategies around Google, if Google goes away, then maybe you can't adapt very well to Yandex or Bing or Baidu or wherever else is going to fill in that blank.
Okay, that's great. And I really like this approach, and I really like the book. Thus, I reached out to you. But as an agency, what we see very often is that, on a theoretical level, I wish that all companies had the same, followed the same approach, when it comes to product-led SEO. But the truth is that most companies are lazy with their efforts and inconsistent. And so I would like to ask you, okay, that's great, but how do you communicate that to a company that you want to work with, to a SaaS company, for example? And how have you managed in your career to do that? Because I guess that, it's not easy to communicate the value and a different approach when it comes to SEO, quite frankly. So, yeah.
So there's a fundamental problem in the SEO world today. And just a shout out to something else that I do besides my book, which is I love connecting people for new jobs. If I can help you find a new job or I can help you find a new employee, just reach out to me. So there's a fundamental problem in the SEO world today, which is there's a severe mismatch for what SEO needs to be successful. Like the concept of SEO needs to be successful and the skill level of the employees that are doing that SEO. And the reason for that is the skills that and the types of people that companies are looking for are just doers. They want them to be tacticians. They want them to just update keywords, update title tags, do some stuff, do some magic, make SEO grow. What they should be looking for are strategic marketers and strategic product people who are doing product-led SEO, of course, that can really think bigger picture and say, why would I spend hours doing this keyword research to update the title tag? Why not think about what's better for the users and create thousands of pieces of content in some sort of scalable way? What can I do to attract more search users as personas, as users of our product? Think more strategically, and ultimately we make more revenue. Again, companies aren't looking for that. So now to your question of like, how do you do that within a company? Well, you step up and you say, I'm here to do that. Mr. Boss, I know you want more money. You haven't told me you want more money. You're telling me that I should just keep my title tags. I should update my backlinks. But instead, what I'd like to offer you is a huge opportunity to grow and to benefit the business. You have to step up. Now, your boss may tell you, go back to your place, or your boss may say, well, that's interesting. I'll give you a shot at building out this good product plan. I'll give you a shot at growing the business and making a bigger impact for this business. And, if you're successful, you're writing your own ticket for success. If you fail, guess what? You go back right to where you were. So what I would say is, yes, obviously it's challenging to step up and say, we have to think about things in a different way and we want to be more strategic, but it's all benefit if you're successful. And if you're not successful, there are many, many, many companies and agencies that will hire you to be a tactical SEO person.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with your points. Okay, then let's say that the company is bought into the idea of building a product for search users. Okay, what is the starting point for that process? Like, is it keyword research? Is it not in the traditional way? Is it competitor analysis? Is it something completely different? Is it getting on customer interviews? What is the starting point for this process?
Customer interviews. This is all about people and all about users. So you want to talk to customers and find out, are customers even looking for the thing that you want to build? Keyword research would be the wrong place to start because that's a feedback loop based on what people are searching. And you certainly don't want to look at competitors. You may, after you've talked to customers, then say, what are our competitors doing poorly? And how can I better add value to those customers? And how do I build better search? Now, there's a new concept in search, and people start talking about, I forget the acronym, but it's zero search volume keywords. And they like, oh, look, you can do all this and you can improve it. This is that idea, but at scale. So I'm not thinking about zero search volume keywords. I'm not even thinking about keywords, search volume. I'm thinking about users. If I've talked to users and 10 users tell me they're all looking for the same thing, but they don't look for it because it doesn't exist, then you create it. And guess what? Those end up being zero search volume keywords. But instead of thinking about a single keyword, which again is the wrong frame of mind I think you should be in, a zero search volume keyword, I think you think about it at scale. wow, there are 10 users that think like this. Are they representative of thousands of other users that I also want to create for and create great products for and scale that up? So you start with customers. You don't necessarily have to do customer interviews. You could look at customer data. You could look at yourself. You can brainstorm a process and say, what's missing for me? If this were my product, and I know we're going to talk about SaaS, if this were my product, what am I missing? What helps me to understand that I have this problem? You know, like I'll give you an example. I just downloaded a Chrome text expander so I write better emails. And if I were thinking about SEO for that, again, SEO for SaaS is actually very difficult because it's not multidimensional, but it can be multidimensional. If I'm looking for a text expander, what am I looking for? So I'm looking for, I want to save more time in the day. I know that's a problem I have. So for doing SEO around it, and I'm not going to optimize for the word text expander. I'm going to optimize for the problem and get people who are like, oh, I was looking to save more time in the day by hiring an assistant, but I could just add this Chrome plugin. So you think about those kind of processes. What do you add? How do you add value to the user and know that users are going to be searching for that? And that's how you build your SEO.
Okay, that's very interesting. Let's say that we have a product, okay, that's created for search users. And let's use an example here. Let's say that we are an analytics SaaS for financial advisors, okay? And we want to build a product that's kind of a directory for financial advisors. And this is an indirect way of essentially targeting our audience, financial advisors, and letting them know that you have been listed in our directory. And at the same time, obviously, it will generate some traffic as a side effect. My question, though, for that product, if we assume that this is a search product, would be, how do you measure success? Like, what would be the metrics for this? Or if you have any other examples, we can analyze those as well. How do you define success here? And how do you communicate that success to the company? Like, these are the metrics that we will use. Because I assume, since we are talking about the product, that our approach has to be completely different. Like, even the typical metrics that people use wrongly, if you ask me, like, bounce rate and things like that when it comes to engagement, which is totally wrong, not entirely, but for the most part wrong, are not enough here. How do you measure success? Like, is it by engagement metrics? Is it something else?
Yeah, so this is the challenge, and this is why I don't love doing SEO for SaaS. With many SaaS tools, and SaaS will range. SaaS will range from what you're talking about. SaaS will range for the what I talked about, that Chrome plugin. It's SaaS, right? You install it on your Chrome browser, and it's software, right? So it ranges. So SaaS, like the Chrome plugin I was talking about, I do some SEO, I download the plugin, I use it, done, right? Maybe to say that there's a benefit to SEO, there has to be some upgrade that I pay them for whatever I have to pay them for. Going even further down that continuum of SaaS, you then have SaaS like an analytics tool, which costs $1 million per year, or Google Cloud, which costs tens of millions of dollars per year. That's also a SaaS. So going down that, so then to prove that it's valuable. So unfortunately, when it comes to any sort of digital marketing, everyone's always like, well, it's measured by conversion. But when it's a Google Cloud and it's millions and millions of dollars and the CIO needs to sign off, it's hard to prove that it ever mattered, that the SEO you did ever mattered to get that final contract signed. Now with the text expander, where it's just a quick download, yes. So I think SEO does matter at some sort of level, and you have to make that investment into SEO, a relative investment. You don't spend millions of dollars on it if you can't ever prove it works. But you need to find like nearer term metrics that prove value for it, that help you generate some sort of conversion element. So it could be, do they end up following you on social media? Could be, do they join your community? Do you get your email address? With assumption that, again, you're not going to go all the way for the conversion, but how do you prove that the search worked? So then you can say, well, we captured their email address, and 6 months later, the salesperson had a conversation. We got the email address from SEO. So obviously don't accrue all of that credit to SEO, but acknowledge that SEO worked and figure out some sort of value to that.
Okay, I see. I'd like to ask now, based on the example that I shared with you, and obviously I'd like to hear your approach in general. Let's say that you need to build a team for the purpose of building a product, how would you approach that? What would you say are the roles that are required? And as you mentioned earlier, okay, SaaS may not be the best example because it's not like multidimensional and so complex. Let's say things are more straightforward there when it comes to search. But for any other kind of product, what would you say are the roles if you are building a team today for a project, for a client project? What would you say are the roles that you need, that you definitely need to have in your team in order for this operation to work?
So you need SEO, but I think you think of the SEO person as a product manager. So that product manager typically has an ability to allocate resources from engineers. They have the ability to allocate resources from design. They have an ability to allocate resources from marketers. So the person driving that is a product manager, and it depends how big it is. Maybe you have more product managers, but you also probably will need a project manager to really just make sure every one of those teams are online and they're all delivering. I like to think about it from a hub and spoke approach rather than a linear approach. And again, the way traditional SEO might be is it's linear. It's like, I do this, I tell the content person to do this, then you bring it back to me and I optimize that. Then I go to a design person, I put a design on there. When you think about this hub and spoke, it's like it's a big product and all these things are inputs into that product. Design is going to give me a design for the product I scoped out. Content's going to give me content. Engineering is going to build it. I have analytics attached to it. And again, instead of this like, well, I just launch it and do, you want to think bigger picture. And again, most SEO within companies, they're not thinking about the bigger aspects to it. They don't think about design because there's a design already tagged on to what it is they're creating. It's a page. They don't think about the technology behind it because there's a blog, there's a CMS. So from this aspect, you think about all of that. You're like, the CMS we have right now would not fit with what we're trying to build. So we need another CMS, or this doesn't work with the CMS. We need a data set. We need analytics. So like, that's who the team is. It really depends on what you're building, but you do need all those inputs. You need analytics, you need design, you need content, you need product and multiple product potentially. And ideally a project manager to really help you move all those processes forward.
Okay, it makes sense. Let's say that we have the product now, it's finished, okay? What would be the next steps in terms of getting this product in front of the right eyes? Because I assume that people have to find it in order to use it, okay? And I know that we may not be as focused on organic search in terms of people have to find it through Google, for example, but they have to find it somehow. How do you approach that in general? And what, in your opinion and in your experience, are the best channels and ways to getting the product in front of people's eyes?
So I don't like saying this, but not SEO. So when you're building an SEO product, it's going to take you 18 months, realistically. You know, I've launched things and it takes, 2 weeks in, you're like, guess what? It's indexed. It's really cool. I've gotten a click. I've got 10 impressions. And then 3 months in, they're like, did you even do anything here? You've got 100 impressions. Your whole product is 100 impressions. 6 months later, they're like, I just want, we made a few $1,000s or euros. A year later, they're like, oh, that's pretty good. 18 months later, they're like, can you work for us? Right? So like, that's that process, right? So like, when you're building a product like that, you actually have to find other channels to drive revenue for it because you've made a huge investment. So unfortunately, and I hate saying this, SEO is not that channel. You build a product for SEO and you put it out there and you optimize it, iterate on it and wait for the traffic to come in. But in the meantime, you're probably going to want to do paid traffic. If you build something really good, you're going to do branded traffic and really, drive awareness for it. And if you think about backlinks, backlinks are useless, especially if it's something people aren't really looking for. So that's when you're doing PR. You get people talking about it and they're linking to it. And then it becomes a thing and then you dominate that space. So this is a really long process. And it's not about, oh, I got this domain authority link. It's really about, I built a really cool product that everyone wants to talk about. And Google says everyone's talking about it. You're the original source of it. So it's a domain name, domain authority 5 out of 100. But you're the product for it. So like, that's the way you really have to think about it. And you build a product for users, so get the users wherever those users are going to be. And it's not built a product for SEO, so therefore it can only work in SEO.
Like, if I would have to approach that, I would say things like launching that product to Product Hunt could work, or try in a way to generate some buzz around it. Even, share it obviously with your email list if you have one, and also using channels that obviously are not yours, such as Product Hunt, as I mentioned, in order to get that product in front of people's eyes. Because if we exclude search from organic search, at least for the beginning, from the whole distribution and promotion process, I would say that you have to find some ways to get it in front of people's eyes. So yeah. Now, the next question that I have for you, and I'd like to hear your thoughts here, it's something that I'm very interested in. Obviously, Google is the best search product when it comes to how people can find things, and also its search products inside the search engine, such as flights and hotels and all the search features that start dominating the SERP are becoming very popular, since essentially the channel is owned by Google, and thus people are going to use them either way, which leaves little to no space in some cases to publishers and websites and so on, and businesses in general. And obviously we have the issue of no-click searches, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. This may not be a problem in SaaS, but it's a problem when it comes to travel, the travel industry, or hotels and so on and so forth. So I'd like to hear your thoughts as to what companies can do, if they can do something, to fight back no-click searches. Yeah.
So first of all, no-click searches, I think, are something that people complain about, but that's not a fair thing to complain about. Google is building a better product, and in some cases, they're using the same data. So like, what time is it right now in Greece? I Googled that. There used to be a website, timeanddate.com. They probably still rank #1 for it. But why should I have to click that when Google could just tell me? And you also have to think about no-click searches are driven by all these devices, the assistant devices and the home devices. These are structured data sets. So that's what they are. Like, if that's the way you drive traffic, if you drive traffic off of writing blog posts about single word answers, how tall is the president? Who is the president? What time is it? Eventually that search goes away. There's a new complaint in no-click search about the automotive space. I spent many years in the automotive space on SEO, that Google now is showing data around cars. Well, that's fair, because a lot of these automotive websites bought the data from a single source, and they put it on their websites, and they use that data that is not unique to build content around. Google just said, well, we can also buy the same data, and we'll also put it on our webpage, and it happens to be that we own the search, and you can see it there. So I think it's unfair to complain about no-click search, because it's better for users. If you are forcing people to read a blog post to get an answer, that's not fair. Now, when it comes to like the competitiveness of Google, some of it's fair and some of it's unfair. In the travel space, is it fair that Google has their own flights product and is able to promote it on the top of search? Well, the law says it's fair. They built the search engine, and they built it, and they own a flights product. Unfortunately for Expedia and Kayak and all the other companies and Booking, the ones that lose, they lose. That is what it is. Now, if you're in the travel space and you're not selling something directly that Google's also selling, then it comes down to product-led SEO. You want to find, I'm not optimizing for what time does this plane land, because again, Google can buy the exact same data set. Now optimize for something like, there's a website, I think it's, I can't remember the name, Seat Guru maybe. Optimize for like, how comfortable is the plane? How big are the seats? That's something that Google's not going to do. So really think about a differentiated product in what you're doing, rather than, oh, I'm using the data set and I hope that Google doesn't catch me and promote their own data set. So zero-click searches, I think Google's entitled. I think as users, we want zero-click searches unless we're doing SEO. The other spaces, the law says it's fair, so it is what it is. Okay,
I like that opinion. Thanks for sharing. Now, I'd like to ask you something. In the interview that you gave for Kevin Indig's TechBound podcast, you mentioned that you were consulting with a company that was willing to invest, I think, $1 billion in the next 5 years. And obviously, a company that is willing to invest $1 billion in the next 5 years is a company that believes in the power of SEO. And at the same time, it believes that there is a future in SEO. I'd like to hear your thoughts on SEO and content in general, because it's, many people can argue that Google is taking what is Google's, the property that it has built, and it has every right to do so. But I'd like to hear your thoughts when it comes to, is there a future for publishers, for websites, for businesses, when it comes to organic search, and how does that future look like?
Yeah, I love when people say that. So like Google doesn't do everything well. I mean, look at all the things that Google shut down. So is there a future for publishers? Google's not going to do on the ground reporting in places. That's a Google News. Like they want to aggregate the news, but if the news sites went away, then Google would have nothing to be in the news. So we need content. If we want to understand what the size of the SEO opportunity is, you just go straight to the numbers. So I don't know how much of this they share, but like you could look at the Google earnings reports and you could try to figure out how, like what the click-through rate is on ads, like how much money is made from that click-through rate. You could also look at the average click-through rate on any PPC blog and try to calculate the revenue that comes from that click-through rate. So let's say that revenue is 10%. Let's say the revenue Google makes, I don't remember it, so I'm not gonna make up a number, but it's billions, hundreds of billions. It comes from a 10% click-through rate. So all of that is 10%, right? Now, give another 20 or 30% to zero-click search. Now multiply, so let's say we're at 30%, right? So we're at 30% is taken up, 20% by zero-click search, 10% by clicks on ads. You now have 70% of all of the 2 trillion searches or whatever per month that are going to organic. That's the opportunity. What's the value of that opportunity? Well, you can just multiply that value to at least 2 times that total revenue number that Google earns. But I think it's so much higher. I think that organic number is much higher. So organic's never going to go away. Google will never be in the business of providing all the content that every website in the world will do. I mean, even from a local standpoint, they just can't. So, I mean, the search landscape is growing. And right now it's huge. Right now it's not dead, and it's only going to continue to grow. Google's spending billions of dollars on creating devices, assistant devices, and Android devices. They don't make money off of Android. They give it away for free, right? They sell a single phone, which I love. They sell the Pixel phone, and I don't think they make a ton of money off of that. It's really all about the Trojan horse. It's really all about doing more searches. They're not spending billions of dollars on this because people are going to stop searching. I had a client that told me that they didn't want to do SEO because they work with the younger people. Gen Z doesn't search. They just do Snap, Instagram. Great. I think that Google doesn't think so, that generations will continue to search long into the future. They may not search the way we search today. They may not search by typing things. They may search by image. They may search by voice. They may search by video. They may search by glasses, right? But what it comes down to is what their searches they're doing are all going to be for websites. Google is going to throw their images in. If you do a search for an image, they'll show you an image, but it comes from a website. You do a search for a video, and back to your other question about like competing with Google, the one place I think it's challenging to compete with Google is on video. But Google's aware of that, and there's a recent blog post about them talking to Vimeo and Twitch to try to get those into search, because that's a problem. That's a problem, that when you do a video search, you're basically only seeing YouTube, and the government's going to be like, hey, that's not right, right? So like they're trying to get those other videos and to be like, well, Twitch and Vimeo are here too. But when you do these searches, you're going to be finding other websites, and hopefully not just Google websites. So search is absolutely going to continue to grow differently than it is. Like, can you imagine, like, SEO did die 10 years ago if all you were expected to do is do like head keyword search and click on something. It's completely changed. But SEO is going to continue to exist, and the value of it will continue to grow.
Okay, I like that, because, that's how we make a living. So, yeah, Eli, where people can find more about you and about the book?
So you can find me at elischwartz.co or product-led-seo.com. The book is available for sale on Amazon, and I know in America you can find it on any website, any book selling website, hopefully in Europe too. And please add me on LinkedIn. Just look for Eli Schwartz, and add me on Twitter at 5LE. And if you're looking for a new job, or you're hiring, I love connecting people. I think the world is better. The SEO world is better off if we can get people in better jobs who are paying them more money, because it lifts everyone up. So this is the one place I think we need a little bit of inflation. I don't think people get paid enough for the value they contribute. Like you heard in Kevin Indig's podcast, I worked at a company that thought SEO was worth $1 billion per year. They were not paying me $1 billion per year. So like the value exchange there is significantly higher than the input.
Yeah, obviously. And I think that this is a great way to end this this episode. Eli, thank you very much for being with us. So
great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.